Hello, everybody. We're here to talk about the London LED Summit, which is happening on Tuesday, May the 18th during London Digital Signage Week. It's an in-person event, one of the first for over a year in the AV industry. The keynote for the London LED Summit is this famous man I have with me here, Bob Kronman.
Hello, Adrian.
Are you okay, Bob?
Doing very well, thank you.
You look like you're not in your office. You look like you're at home.
Well, it's the home office, so trying to bounce around to as many places as I can, safely distanced.
Good. Are you keeping busy in the COVID times?
Very much so. Looking at projects for the future, finishing projects that started pre-COVID, some a long time ago, and some that started during COVID that are finally coming to fruition.
Well, that's good to know. It seems that everybody who has had to close something for COVID has been refreshing their screens, whether they be LCD video walls or LED or whatever. I guess you've been really busy with the refreshing of all the offices, stadiums, and retail stuff, I guess.
Retail and sports have been extremely busy. Budgets have been released now that people are starting to return to the high street, starting to return to the stadiums. There was a lot of work that was done during the pandemic where limited number of people could work in a stadium or in a retail environment. And a lot of companies took advantage of that, predicting that when they reopened, people would want to have those touch points and those visual points that were more important to them than they had been previously. Right. Everybody's used to Zoom now, so it's easier to look at somebody on a screen.
Yeah, that's very good news for the AV industry then. Do you think that was predicted, or did that surprise people? Or
it was, to a degree, it was predicted. The advent of the million huddle rooms that were done in 2017 to 2020 prepared people to use screens on a regular basis. People got used to using them. I think it's not the death knell of the huddle room, but people in close contact, 2 or 3 people in a very small room, I think is going to be rethought. I think we're going to get larger conference rooms, back to everything that we had previously, but with a bigger screen on the wall at the end, better cameras, and a better ability to communicate through screens with people we want to in retail. So placing orders on touch screens, everything from a kiosk up to a control room. We're going to see new products and new methods of delivering audiovisual to people on the street.
Right, that's brilliant. Well, you're at the coalface of many of these projects, UK, Europe, and globally, I think, really, Bob.
Yep, correct.
Stadiums, football stadiums or sports stadiums, you do lots of work in that area. They've obviously been focusing on getting more screens into these places as well.
Absolutely. The concern is that people are comfortable with digital and they can watch something on their TV at home. So how do you create an environment where they want to go and mix with other people? Whereas it used to be 60 or 80,000 people in a stadium, it's now worth to some teams, especially in the US, to lose 500 or 1,000 seats and put bigger screens that give more of that digital experience, more of that live experience to the customers who are paying their 60 or 100 or $200 or 500 pounds for a season ticket to go and be in the stadium and have that, oh yeah, I can see the same adverts that are running at home, I can see here. Because for some reason, people seem to enjoy adverts.
I guess it's the close-ups and the slow motions of the tries and the goals and the...
Exactly.
Whatever. Exactly. That's brilliant. Well, that's really good. Well, I'm glad you've been keeping busy. You're probably one of the busiest men in the industry. So again, thanks very much for agreeing to keynote the London LED Summit. As you know, it's our first regional LED Summit that we're holding. We've got the Global LED Summit coming up in New York during New York Digital Signage Week, and I think that's on October the 14th. I think it's the Thursday of that week. So we've got a half-day event at Samsung King's Cross Experience Center. It's an in-person event. We've pretty much sold all of our tickets now. What are you going to talk about? What are you going to lead us into then in your keynote session?
I think there's some challenges and opportunities for the LED industry and the AV industry. Some of those challenges are, how are we dealing with quotas and taxes from the global business? China seems to be consolidating some of the LED industry and also poking the lion that is the global giants of retail and industry. So are the costs going to go up or are the costs going to go down for LED? challenges? Are customers looking at challenges for not just the purchase price of screens, but the cost of the lifetime investment in the screen? Do they understand that a screen it's not for life, it's for 10 years? And how much is that going to cost them over not just the purchase price, but over the life of the screen? And I think finally, there's a real challenge. What happens to old screen? What happens? Everybody's concerned about the environment. What's happening to these old screens? Are they being
do they ever get recycled, Bob?
A lot of rental screens seem to be going into retail, where there isn't a big appetite for brand new screens. But then the prices of new screen coming out of China make buying a new screen quite reasonable.
Right.
So finding that channel for not necessarily recycling, but retasking LED is becoming a business in and of itself.
Right. We've heard of a couple of companies who are starting to think about or starting to manufacture their own LED products in their own countries, mainly in America. Is that a trend that's happening, or is China always going to be the dominant provider of LED?
Well, we're returning to the old days, the original days of LED, all of 20 years ago, where Daktronics had a full factory setup. At one time, Barco had a full factory setup. Yesco, before they sold their manufacturing processes to PrismView, were a full factory setup manufacturing in the US. I think there are opportunities for that. It's still the cost-effective way is to go to China for manufacture of components, but assembly of screens, I think, will increasingly be done in local countries, whether that's Europe, Middle East, Africa, or the US.
Okay, it's interesting. Will you touch upon the diminishing pixel pitch of the LED, the improved quality, or is that something that's passed us by?
No, I think the narrow pixel pitch, as somebody labeled it a few years ago, we're getting tighter and tighter. We're sub 1 millimeter for certain products. And it's the same race that we're having with mobile phones, cell phones, that, the displays keep getting bigger and bigger because people want to see more on their display. It's a tale of two cities, really. How narrow a pixel pitch can you use outdoor? How bright is that pixel pitch? Is it worth using it outdoor? How many pixels do you actually need? And ultimately, if you're working on 8K or 10K or 12K or 20K of content, how do you process that much information?
Right. Yeah, that's
and
the big issue.
Do we have the processing to deal with that many pixels?
Yeah. Final question. I think if I was putting the agenda together now, probably in the last couple of weeks, the agenda's been together for a while. The LED Summit's obviously had a couple of moves of dates, just like ISE really.
Wow.
I would probably have on the agenda something to do with XR.
Agreed.
There's a lot of studio type discussions going on there. How do you think LED is going to play into that?
LED, a lot of the rental and AV businesses have had an opportunity to push XR forward in leaps and bounds over the last year. Technicians have been available. Rental products have been available to test so many innovations.
And did they? Is the $1 million question?
Yeah, many of them did.
Oh, okay.
I've seen 4 or 5 separate VR and XR studios set up in the London and the UK area. In the last 6 months, I've seen companies like Disguise and Creative Technology and White Light, who've all contributed to the development work that's gone on in this. I think it's an area for discussion. I think XR in the film world is certainly, we're beginning that next generation of technology and how it's going to be used. I think in the retail and the advertising and the broadcast, we're still in the VR world where people are using it as a green screen, but they're going to look at XR as the next, as a future way to reduce cost, to reduce location time, to make it safer for people. If the pandemic isn't over in January 2022, it does look like we're going to have to take some of these opportunities and make them a daily, regularly used technology.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, well, I know that your keynote's going to be fascinating. For those who are watching this, there are a handful of tickets still available. Bob, we look forward to seeing you in person. We have to keep reminding people, in person, Tuesday, May the 18th at Samsung King's Cross. So until then, Bob, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Adrian. Looking forward to seeing everybody there.